Good morning, financial algebra. We're going to cover 8.1, which is on the different types of business organizations. So the first thing I want to go over to is this term called capital. And this is the money used to start or expand your business. So it's the money that it costs for you to start a business. That is your capital. That is the amount you have invested into your business. Now, it goes over three different types of business organizations. So a sole proprietor would be like a self-employed person where you only have one owner, but you are solely liable for expenses, for the income, for damages, lawsuits, right? Because you're the only owner. Partners can be a group of people, and in a partnership, you are personally liable for any losses or liabilities. Meaning, like, there could be three of you that own the company, and if something goes wrong, they can come after your personal, like, home or your personal car. A corporation can be one person or a group, and your liability is limited. So those are the three types. The math in this section is really simple, but I've put examples that are like the ones you'll see in your homework. So compare this to what you see in your homework, print this out, and copy what's done in one example compared to your homework. So number one, Avril invested $60,000 in a partnership with the following people: Lane, Jules, Ray, Ravi, and Petra. The total amount of all partners was $320,000. What percent does Avril own? So she invested $60,000 out of $320,000. So $60,000 divided by the total, and you should get 0.1875, meaning that Avril owns 18.75%, right? Because we moved the decimal over 2 places. Meaning that the other partners are splitting the rest. Number two, the Metropolitan Corporation has issued 2.4 million shares. The Northside Investment owns 7.5% of those shares. So how many shares do they own? Well, you'd simply multiply 0.075 times the number of shares. Remember, we have to always convert from percent to decimal, decimal to percent. So if you multiply those, you should get 180,000, and that's the number of shares that they hold in this company. All right. Enid, Eve, and Tammy have formed a partnership. Their total investment is $400,000. Enid owns 35.4 and Eve owns 28.8. How much did Tammy invest? Well, first we had to figure out what percentage. So I'm going to take 100% minus Enid. Okay, so that's Enid. Minus Eve, which was 28.8. And that will give us Tammy's percent. So if you subtract the other two partners, Tammy owns 35.8%. So this says how much. So you take her percent, 0.358, and multiply it by the amount of money, and you get $143,200. So that is how much money Tammy invested, because you first had to find her percent. All right, now we're going to get into ratios. And so the book goes over how to solve this, but here is their ratio, and the ratio will be listed in order of partners. So how much did they each invest? So we're going to take this ratio and set it up with x. So 6x plus 8x plus 11x, and we're going to equal that to the total amount invested. And then we're going to solve this algebraic equation. So 6x plus 8x plus 11x gave me 25. X equals 1.2 million. Divide by 25. and X equals 48,000. So we have to find how much they each invested. So the person who did 6X would be 6 times 48,000, which means they invested 288. The person who invested 8X would be 8 times the 48,000, which means they invested 384,000. And the person who invested 11X would be 11 times X, which is 48,000. They invested $528,000. And so those are the three amounts that these partners invested. So moving on. So Allie, Beth, Katie, Dave, Franny, and George. Now, the order of these names matches the order of this. So the order of names will match order of ratios, which means the first number is Allie, the second number is Beth, the third number is Katie, and so on. So let's set up this investment. Okay, so just like we did for the last one, 1X plus 2X plus assign an X to each one. And set that equal to the amount of money invested, so 4.914 million. I'm going to combine like terms, so on the left, now note this first is Allie, and this is George, because Allie's first and George is last. So I'm going to combine all of those, and I get 21X equals 4,914,000 million. Sorry, I'm going to divide each side by 21, and I get that X equals 234,000. So if Allie only invested 1X, then Allie invested 234,000. However, George invested 7 times 34,000. And so George invested a total of $1,404,000. So he invested the most out of any of the partners. Number 6, Dennis owns 24%, Bob owns 48%. If Rich is the third partner, what percent does he own? So 100, right, minus Dennis, minus Bob, and that will give us the amount that Richard owns. So if you subtract those three, Rich owns 28%. Write a simplified ratio. So I have 24, 48, 28. Now I'm going to reduce these by the GCF, meaning the greatest number that goes into all of them. And the greatest number that goes into all of them is 4. So 24 divided by 4 is 6. 48 divided by 4 is 12. And 28 divided by 4 is 7. And so that is the ratio of this partnership. All right, so number 7. We're halfway, almost halfway. Angel owns 5/8 of a partnership. What percent is that? So 5/8, you're going to enter that in your calculator. So 5 divided by 8, which gave me 0.625, which would be 62.5%. Angel's partner Lisa owns the remaining. So if one partner owns 5/8, plus what would give us 8/8? 3/8. So Angel, this is Angel. Lisa has 3/8. That's Lisa. Write a simplified ratio. Well, it would simply be 5 to 3. right? He has 5 of it. She has 3. Real simple. Number 8. Austin owns 7/16 of a jewelry store. The total investment for the store was $832,000. So I'm simply going to multiply 7/16 by 832,000, and that will give you the amount. So that gave me $364,000. Couple more. This is another one. These are kind of repetitive, so we can go over number 9 quickly, but Penny owns 5/9 of a movie theater. Penny's investment, so 5/9 of something, is worth $450,000. What is the total investment that was made? So she made 5/9 of the total, and that 5/9 equaled $450,000. So to find the total, we divide by 5/9, which means we multiply by the reciprocal. So X equals, take 450,000, times it by 9, divided by 5, and I get $810,000. Number 10, the Barnaby Company issued 2.7 million shares. And it says, how many shares must a share owner have to have a majority? Majority means more than 50% of the shares. So I have to find what is 50% of 2.7 million. So if I multiply that, I get 1,350,000. So 50% would be just plus 1. So 1,350,001. That would be how you would have the majority of sales. Number 11. Ella owns 15% of Fitz Incorporated. The rest of the shares are owned equally by the remaining 5 shares. What percent of the corporation does each of the shareholders own? Okay, so 100 minus Ella, which is 15%, equals 85. So 85% is divided up equally by 5 people. So I would divide that. That gives me 17. So 17% is owned by all the remaining partners. Clinton and Barbara are partners in the local music shop. They need almost $500,000 to start a business. They invest with an 11-12 ratio. So, again, remember, 11x plus 12x equals the amount they invested. So this gives me 23x equals 448,500. So that means x equals 19,500. So Clinton had a ratio of 11. So 11 times 19,500 equals 214,500. Barbara is 12 times 19,500, and so her investment was 234,000. So that's part A. Part B, what percent of the business is owned by Clinton? Well, Clinton owes 11 out of 23. So he has 47.8% of the business. 3 more. I'll do 3 more just so you have plenty of examples to work off of for your homework assignment. So how much did Andrea, Dinah, and Lindsay invested in a partnership? Here's the ratio, 7, 9, 14. Remember, that's in order of names, so 7, 9, 14. Okay, that's where I'm getting that. 10 years later, their partnership was worth $1.8 million. Dinah decided to move to Europe and sold her part of the partnership to Andrea. So how much did Andrea have to pay Dinah for her partnership? Well, first I have to figure out what percentage she had of the 1.8 million. So I have 7 plus 9 plus 14 gives me 30. So Dinah had 9 of the 30, which is 30%. So 30% of the worth would mean that her cost would be $540,000. What percent of the business did Andrea own after she bought out Dinah? Well, it would be 7 out of 30 plus the 9 she just bought from Dinah is now 16 out of 30, which if you divide that, that's 53.3%. What was the new ratio of ownership? 16 to 14, because there's only 2 people. And that's it. Last 2. 55 1/2, so 55.5% of shareholders in a fast food chain are less than 40 years old. If the corporation is owned by 86,000 investors, how many are older? Well, what's 100 minus 55.5? That gives me 45.5. So 45.5% are greater than 40 years old. So then I would take 45.5, make that a decimal, multiply that by the number of shareholders, and that gives me that 38,270 of them are over 40. A partnership owned by 25 partners is worth $5.4 million. The partnership loses a lawsuit worth $6.2. How much of the settlement is each partner liable? Well, 6.2 minus the 5.4 is 0.8, which is $800,000. Divide that by the 25 partners, and they are each liable for $32,000. Remember, partners, they are personally liable for any loss that is incurred. But that is the end of that lesson.